On this Valentine's Day weekend, I want to talk about marriage, first and foremost, extending to our married couples and engaged couples, promise of continued prayer and support in all of the important work that you do. But I really want to speak in this homily about a movement in our society that should be deeply disturbing to us all. The gospel today provides a perfect starting point. From the gospel and from many other passages in the New Testament, it is clear that marriage is an institution that matters to Jesus, and so must it matter to us. 3 points from the scriptures today. First of all, when we speak of marriage, we touch on natural law, that law that God has written on the heart of every human being. There are some things that we just know to be morally wrong. Nor does one have to be a religious person to grasp the natural law. Natural law is just that, the law that pertains to our nature as human beings. Natural law is unchanging, immutable, permanent throughout all the variations in human history. It is of nature that man and woman are complementary. One completes the other. Think about what that means. It is of nature, it is of God, that the manner by which the human species is propagated is exactly the same manner by which husband and wife express the most tender of feelings. Expressing love and begetting new life, the unitive and the procreative dimensions of marriage go together, naturally, by design, natural law. Second, when we speak of marriage, we touch on divine law, the law imparted by God to Moses on Mount Sinai in the giving of the 10 Commandments. Now, at that moment, at the moment when God gave the 10 Commandments, it did not suddenly become wrong to kill, to steal, to lie. Rather, God puts into clear and unambiguous terms the natural law that He has written on the heart. The 10 Commandments represent a light offered to the conscience of every man and woman, a light that makes God's will clearly known, and a light that protects every human being against evil. Through the 6th commandment, our Lord speaks of the 6th commandment in the gospel today, thou shalt not commit adultery. God makes explicit what is already written in the heart, that adultery is wrong. For when the marriage covenant is violated, there will always be victims. The institution of marriage guides men and women, but especially men, to act not selfishly, but in the best interests of spouse and children. Marriage safeguards the rights of children to be raised by a father and a mother. I know that this doesn't always happen, and that through God's grace and heroic virtue, single-parent families can show great resilience and tremendous love, and that's a beautiful thing. Nevertheless, natural law and the 6th commandment are all about protecting the rights of every child to experience the stability of a two-parent home and to be raised by a mother and a father. Divine law, the law of the Old Testament. Third point, when we speak of marriage, as we have, first from natural law, second from the law of the Old Testament, when we speak of marriage, we also speak, third, of the law of Jesus Christ, His will, His plan for the human race. In the gospel today, our Lord affirms the sixth commandment and at the same time enlarges and deepens it profoundly. Not only does our Lord reaffirm the prohibition against adultery, He enlarges that prohibition by including lust in the heart, that seemingly harmless hobby of some men, that preoccupation with passing beauty that is never without consequence for his marriage. For the Lord, marriage is about a totality of self-giving, holding nothing back, no strings attached, just as He loves His bride, the church. Our Lord elevates marriage to the level of a sacrament, so that the chaste and fruitful love of husband and wife will symbolize and make present His perfect and life-giving love for His bride, the church. Our Lord's law is a law of love, and His commandment is not simply that a man should not commit adultery, but that a husband must love his wife. That a husband must love his wife. We take this for granted, but that statement was revolutionary in His day. The phrase, "Husbands, love your wives," is not to be found in the classic Greek philosophy, nor in the esteemed Roman law, nor in the mysticism of the Persians. In the ancient world, that phrase appears for the first time in the New Testament. It would be worth considering the tremendous influence of Christianity upon the institution of marriage before we begin to reinvent it according to our own terms. Marriage is an institution that matters to Jesus, and so must it matter to us. Marriage is not arbitrary, subject to redefinition by a state legislature, nor by a federal judge. Marriage is of God and is of the natural law. The marriage of one man and one woman is capable of expressing the greatest love of all, the love of our Lord on the cross, the love of the bridegroom for his bride, a tender love, a merciful love, a sacrificial love, a fruitful love. And if you disagree with the church in this regard, please consider that one who stands against the stampede, one who uses the natural law argument, is restating nearly 2 millennia of both church teaching and civil law. And that person is reflecting countless millennia of human experience. That person does not deserve to be treated as a pariah, nor a bigot, nor a segregationalist. That being said, one who affirms traditional marriage and rejects attempts to redefine marriage at a fundamental level should not be and must never be a person of hate, nor must that person ever act from prejudice. A person who reaffirms traditional marriage must be a person of love, respecting every human being as a child of God and striving to safeguard every person's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Laws that hinder these goods may be changed to reflect arrangements between consenting adults, but not at the expense of the institution of marriage, that unique covenant designed by God to safeguard the tender, loving exchange between one man and one woman, that vulnerable and beautiful embrace that is both unitive and open to the transmission of human life, that institution designed by God for the dignity of the human person, for the protection of women and children, and for the common good of us all. On this Valentine's Day weekend, may God bless all married and engaged couples, and may the Lord help us to protect the institution of marriage as a sacred bond between one man and one woman.